Greetings. Our Frederick Riddle here with another episode of Christian News and Views. This is episode 263, and this is Monday. I was going through the news this morning and came across an interesting article in the light that China is often in the news. I thought this might be of interest to you. Uh, Here's the article. In the turquoise waters of the South China Sea, one country is challenging Beijing's grip on one of the world's most important maritime thoroughfares. Over 4 years, Vietnam has built out a series of remote rocks, reefs, and atolls to create heavily fortified artificial islands that expand its military footprint in the Spratly Islands, an archipelago where Hanoi's claims clash not only with China's, but also with those of Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. As of March, Vietnam had built more than 2,200 acres of artificial land in the South China Sea, compared with just under 4,000 acres constructed by China, according to the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS. In the 1970s and 80s, China forcibly seized from Vietnam several features in the Spratlys and the Paracel Islands, another disputed archipelago further north, in battles that claimed the lives of dozens of Vietnamese troops. More recently, China took control of Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines in 2012, raising fears among other countries in the region, including Vietnam, that China could do the same to them. Beijing also has pressured Hanoi to cease oil and gas exploration in waters it considers its own and challenged Vietnamese fishermen's access to the paracels. How to build an island. Vietnam began reclaiming land on a large scale in 2021 when huge dredging barges appeared near several reefs and rocks in the Spratlys. Bark Canada Reef, Vietnam's largest, most sophisticated artificial island in the South China Sea, illustrates major new facilities and their purpose. Other islands built out by Vietnam feature many of the same installations, including ports, ammunition storage, and the large administrative buildings or barracks. The Vietnamese government hasn't publicly addressed its artificial island building, although officials have said that the country is focused on protecting its sovereignty in the South China Sea. Spokespeople for the Vietnamese and Chinese foreign ministries didn't respond to requests for comment. When asked in February about Vietnam's land reclamation, a spokesman for the Chinese government said that it opposes construction activities on illegally occupied islands and reefs. However, Chinese forces never sought to prevent Vietnamese dredgers from accessing the outposts. That contrasts with China's aggressive rhetoric and actions against the Philippines, whose vessels it has repeatedly blocked from taking supplies to its more modest outposts in the South China Sea. The strikingly different treatment can be explained by Vietnam's more complex relationship with China, says Kang Vu, a visiting scholar at Boston College. Chinese companies own thousands of factories in Vietnam, from where they export to the U.S. and other countries that have placed higher tariffs on China. The two nations' ruling communist parties have also established ways to tackle issues, such as Chinese aggressions against Vietnamese fishermen in the paracels, out of the public eye. Vietnam wants to manage the dispute with China, but at the same time, we want to prevent another Chinese surprise attack against those islands, says Vu. By contrast, Beijing views the Philippines, a U.S. treaty ally, as a proxy for Washington, whose presence in the South China Sea Beijing opposes. The U.S., which has condemned China's island building, hasn't publicly spoken out against Vietnam's efforts, likely because they are seen as a potential bulwark against Beijing, says Lee Hong Heap, a senior fellow at the ISIS, Yusuf Ishak Institute in Singapore. A State Department official said the U.S. calls on South China Sea claimants to resolve their disputed claims to territory peacefully in accordance with international law. Few analysts believe that Hanoi, with its much smaller Navy and Air Force, could actually defend the outpost during an all out war. That relative weakness also helps explain why other countries in the region have mostly looked the other way on Vietnam's large scale creation of artificial land that can be seen here. China's island building represented a direct threat to a lot of Southeast Asian economic interests. The access to the waters and also was a threat to navigation and international maritime rights, says Boston College's Vu. I don't think that anyone thinks that Vietnam is going to do any of that. So here's my opinion. It's kind of interesting. This little deal. We're on the sidelines, and to me, it highlights past U.S. weakness in opposing only in diplomatic terms China's island building. I remember the incursions against the Philippines, and apparently that's still going on. Um, Knowing that China is an aggressor nation makes one a little uneasy about their activities. On the other hand, Vietnam does have the right to protect its interests and people, but they are relatively small, so I wouldn't make too much of their efforts. I think the more interesting element is what is the United States going to do about China, who has an eye on Taiwan, has had it for a long, long time. So, what I find interesting in this whole thing is the past American um, reaction to all this. We, as a nation, we're a superpower, folks. Whether you like it or not, we are a superpower, which carries with it some moral responsibilities. And for us to just stand by, almost bury our head in the sand, we protest. You know what the Bible talks about in the book of Revelation is when the Antichrist comes on the scene. Or actually, when Russia is eyeing Israel and planning on coming down, the Western nations, which would include the United States, uh, responded by diplomacy, talking. Talking only gets you so far. There's there can be a sign of weakness. If you're going to talk effectively, you got to measure it up with um, weapons, the willingness to take a stand, things of this nature. You have to have so the goal goes back to Theodore Roosevelt, who talked about what was it to have the big stick. He would carrot, you'd hold out the carrot, but you also have the big stick. Um, the it's just more than just an interesting thing. This could play an important role someday. China wants to have Taiwan, not only because they think it belongs to them, but because Taiwan is rather successful. And there's a lot of military and economic advantages to China if they were to take it over. And they would not hesitate to kill those who oppose them. So you got to look at this in a way of what is China's ultimate plan? Well, I think short term is Taiwan. But there's a longer term here too, and that we need to be aware of. They want to be a superpower. Getting control of Taiwan will give them control of the seas all around them. They will have it. They extend it. North Vietnam and rather North Korea and China do the same thing. They extend their borders beyond the international legal limits. And North Korea can't do a whole lot, although we did have the Pueblo incident many years ago. But China has a strong military, and they already use their military to, well, as we've seen, they harass Philippine shipping and stuff of this nature. So somewhere along the line, there's got to be a red line drawn. Somewhere along the line, the United States has got to say enough is enough. If that's going to happen, I don't. I think it's going to have to be the Trump administration that does it. I don't know how they see this, uh, but diplomacy has not really worked. China hasn't stopped this island building. It's like building forts, folks. Back in the beginning of our country, we expanded our territory by going out and building forts in what was considered Indian country. And so eventually we took it away from them, from the Indians, and then built further forts and kept going westward until we got to the Pacific Ocean, going further. Uh, so that's what these are. These are, think of them as forts. They're military in nature, and the ones that the Chinese have. And I think the same thing can be said for Vietnam, although it would appear to be more symbolic and maybe give them a chance to protect their people who are out there, the fishermen and so forth. But they're not an aggressor nation, at least not at this point in time. So this is something that needs to be bear watching. Maybe we should even pray about it. But we need to, our government, I think, needs to pay attention to it. And hopefully they are. That's not something that they're going to broadcast necessarily out to the world. But hopefully they are watching them, and maybe they have a red line in mind. If China goes past this particular point, and we're going to have to do something. I haven't read anything that would say that they have done that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have. So anyhow, that's the news today. I just found it interesting. I thought you might find it interesting. And it could be the Chinese aspect of it could be laying the groundwork for a future war. Much of what they do is looking to the future and expanding. They want to expand. They don't want to be landbound. They want to have their borders completely under their control. As long as Taiwan stays off is there, that's like a um, it's an itch. It's a almost like a knife in their side or something like this, painful, and they want to have control of that. And Taiwan doesn't want to be a part of China. Taiwan is very successful. The people are free. They have a free election. They have a democratic government. They don't want to be under communist control. And that's setting up, and we have a treaty with them. So that is setting up a situation that we need to be alert to and have some countermeasures in mind, if not actually put them in place. Well, that's it for today. I always try to inform you, encourage you, and inspire you. Hopefully, I've done one of those three or all three. But in any case, I hope that that this has been informative for you, for one thing, giving you something to think about, to chew on. And if you feel led to, feel free to comment on my own commentary upon the facts and so forth as I've read them to you, and just keep it decent. That's all I ask. You don't have to agree with me. Maybe, who knows, you might convince me of a different way of looking at things. Well, you have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.